All right, everyone, welcome to episode 24 of Rooted, the Art Arbor podcast. I'm Jake Vanderhayden, your host and moderator, joined by my co-founder and co-host, Andrew Arden Witter, and our very special guest, as always, love our guests on the pod, Robby Fischer, today joining us. And I'll let Andrew take it from here for a little intro and Robby to introduce himself.
Thank you guys for hopping on, listening again. We have a wonderful guest. We love our guest, friend of the show, Robby Fischer. He is Dogtown Studios, founder. He's done just incredible work over the years within the artist community, and been watching him grow, develop, and produce wonderful, amazing content has been a treat as a fellow West Michigander, and so we're super grateful for his time today to hop on the show with us. So thank you, Robby.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to hear about what you all are doing, and happy to be part of the podcast.
Thank you. So there was probably a moment when you weren't down maybe this artist path, or maybe it started from conception, but what kind of give us the journey here of how you came across your medium?
So I've always loved art and drawing and stuff ever since I was a kid. I was kind of like drawn to that. In high school, I started really forming that identity with some friends who were also playing in bands with me and stuff. And then, and then after college, I was playing in a band and playing shows out with a good friend of mine. And then I moved to Grand Rapids because I knew that they had studios, like big warehouse buildings that you can make studios out of. And I happened to know somebody who had one, and they hooked me up with some other people around here who were in this building that I'm in right now. And I started the studio, and it didn't have a name. It wasn't Dogtown Studio or anything when I moved in. It was just a place for me to record and rehearse with my own bands. And it was just like a place to be loud, essentially. And then and so I started I was originally just recording onto tape, onto an 8-track or a 4-track cassette tape recorder. And that was just such a fun era where it was just like, there wasn't a lot of equipment. There was just like the tape recorder, a few microphones, and you just worked with that medium. And there were things that you couldn't make sound any better. So you just had to let that shape what you wrote. And so that was kind of like where the studio started. And then I started getting more equipment and whatnot. And about 8 years ago, I got a video camera, or it wasn't 8 years ago. It was probably more like 10 or 12 years ago that I got a video camera, and I started learning how to use that. And then, and it was about 8 years ago that I started making these sessions with a good friend of mine, Tito. He had just graduated from Full Sail Recording Arts College. And so he had moved back up here, and we were like, okay, with this video camera and with your skills around recording, we can actually start, collaborating with other people, having them in and doing like a Tiny Desk concert type thing, or like a KEXP type thing, or Audio Tree Live type thing, which we were both just super excited to do it, just to make a little thing where we recorded the audio and the video at the same time. And how cool is that? So yeah, so that was 8 years ago, and we started just doing it as much as we can for our friends. And so we were like, let's just try to do it like every week. And so we did a whole year of doing that for somebody or with somebody for an entire year. And we didn't let money come into it for the first year. We're like, we're just going to do this. If you like what we're doing, at the end of the year, we're going to throw a benefit concert, and we're going to do a Kickstarter. And then if we get money from that, we'll, keep doing it and try to make it into a business or something. But we didn't want to be thinking about money for the first year of it. We wanted to be like focusing on that part of us that's just like, I really just want to do this. I really want to spend more hours of my life creating with other people and meeting other people who are creating and trying to make something. And so that's how Dogtown Studio Sessions started. And yeah, that was almost 8 years ago. And then at the end of the first year, we did our benefit concert, we did our Kickstarter, and got a little bit of money, enough to be like, okay, this is like, maybe this can go somewhere. And then, started, sometimes charging for sessions, and then started building on that price. And then eventually it's the type of thing where now it's kind of like the foundation of my business, is doing those sessions.
Wow. I love that. That building the sake doing the thing for the love of the thing, so you can continue to do the thing you love.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like that's so central to it. And it's so easy to have that become distorted. And it's like even when we started at that moment, we were like, we had enough experience moving through art things and sometimes getting paid or sometimes, having other motivations come into it. And we knew how those could change your own relationship to like how enjoyable it is for you. So that's why we set that constraint at the top. And then the right constraints are just so helpful in any situation.
So how did you flip that switch from like going from the focus of just creating and bringing people together to that monetization? Was it almost like you just had built your brand and your reputation enough where people were like coming to you and it was like, hey, it's time to start charging, and like we're overwhelmed with the demand? Or how did that switch? Or was it a little tough at first, or how did that work out for you?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. It's definitely always kind of a growing process, or like a forming process. At the beginning, the way we did it was just starting really, really cheap, and just trying to see it as a way of like, okay, this is just something that makes me more able to carve out time in my life to do this. Because just our hours are all so limited. And at the time I was just working like bartending gigs and kind of jobs like that. And I was like, okay, if I can provide this value to people and they get value from it and they're able to throw some value back to me, it's like a win-win situation. And it makes me have more time where I can do this and refine the skill, refine my system, refine my ability to give them what they need faster, more efficiently. And it's definitely always been a growing process. And I think it's a process where the process of like monetizing your art is such a personal thing. And it's so, I think, related to my personal growth with being able to like be upfront with people, state your needs, and then address resentment as it's building up. Because I think with a lot of artists I know, that's where things can kind of start to fester, is when somebody's paying you, and then there can become a dynamic where you're maybe resenting the work a little bit because it's not something that you're doing freely. It's something that you're doing just for the paycheck or whatever. And the thing is that dynamic can happen even when you're not doing it just for the money. Even when there is a large part of you that wants to do it, there can still be a resentment that can come in. And then it's on you. It's on like me as myself, it's on me to look in myself and be like, okay, am I choosing this? No one is making me do this. And if they are, where can I be honest and say, hey, this arrangement isn't working for me. Can we change this and this and this? And just kind of like taking the responsibility back into my own hands to be like, okay, if I need a different arrangement, I should be upfront about that, and I should tell people that. And if I am not willing to tell people that, I need to address like resentment in myself and say like, hey, remember, no one's making you do this. This is art. This is something that I'm choosing. And that process is something that is always an ongoing process. It gets easier and you get more used to it. And I think more importantly, you realize when it's happening. But it's not something where it's like one and done, for sure.
Well, yeah. Interesting. The part that took precedence in that whole was the level of intimacy you said was with monetizing your art. I mean, could we maybe go a little bit about some of the personal development that's occurred simultaneously along with your business building, so to speak?
Absolutely. I think that anyone out there growing their art, your art journey is your life journey. And it makes sense that the deepest lessons that you have to learn in your own self, in your own like self-growth, and your own ability to relate with the people around you, it makes sense that these are brought to your face especially when you're dealing with your art, because your art is kind of like you taking a piece of your heart and putting it out in front of people and saying like, hey, here, it's a vulnerable thing to do, and it, of course, the parts of you that are in need of growth are going to be stress tested in those moments. Of course, the parts of you that are where you need to learn to grow up a little bit, of course, the things that are hard for you, the things that are your growth edges, are going to be brought to the fore when you're doing something vulnerable, like putting your art out into the world for people that you know, and then for people that you don't know, and then for people who you don't know who are just paying you. And it's a vulnerable thing to do. It's not like I'm just over here making steel tool and die parts for somebody's tool. That's a little bit less of a personal thing, usually. But I'm not out here making a commodity. But in some senses, I kind of am.
Mm-hmm.
And you're walking that line where some people might treat you as a commodity, but you're like, this isn't just like AI art off the shelf. I didn't just click create. I like put thought into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it becomes personal, I think, if you have a horse in the race with these kind of careers. And I think everybody who I know who really cares about their art has that horse in the race, and it's a thing to learn to navigate, for sure.
So with what's core to your business and everything that you do is, of course, content creation, these sessions, and putting together this media for artists and those like, and as it relates to our Modern Artist Optimization Index series that we've been featuring here on the podcast, we're going to really talk today about strategies for content in general, but specifically long form content. I mean, this podcast is an example of long form content, but I think most people struggle with that between finding the place and the space to actually put it together, how to be prepared for a session like that, how to distribute it, how to market it, everything in between with making that successful. And I know that you have a lot of experience with that and different facets of the marketing and obviously the production itself. So just kind of share like the whole journey from like when someone would come to you to start a project to the execution, the marketing, getting it out the door, and actually putting it out in the world.
Yeah. So when somebody books with me, what they'll do is they'll book, let's just say it's a band. They'll book a package with me. Normally it's a 3-song package. And what they'll come in and do is they'll record 3 songs here in my studio, and it'll be a video and the audio of their 3 songs. And then once that gets delivered to them, usually the thing that that people will do is they'll put it on their socials, they'll put it on their YouTube, but I think the most impactful thing that people do with it is they make an EPK out of it, which is electronic press kit, is what an EPK stands for. And what they'll do is they'll take their songs and they'll start to use them as their booking tools. And what we found with our Dogtown sessions is that is really the most impactful way to leverage a Dogtown session, is to leverage it as a tool to book better shows. Because when you have a professional, like, full video and you're sending it out to people, it just gives a really good first impression, and that is the most powerful way to leverage what you made here. We found in that, of course, people put it on social media. Of course, people put it on YouTube. That's great. But for 99 out of 100 people who I've worked with, that is not where their main return on investment comes when they're talking about the money that they paid me. The bands that make their money back the fastest are the bands who take their videos, put them into an EPK, and just start emailing them out to venues, because live music is still a place where there is money for music, more so than YouTube ad revenue or TikTok. I think that there's this kind of disproportional focus on things like monetizing via YouTube or monetizing via TikTok, that is actually not the way that most bands make actual money, in my experience. Yeah, because if you take a Dogtown session video, you send it to a few people, you can easily be out making $300, $400, $500, $600 more shows really quickly, even if you don't have a previous career in music. And to make $300 from a YouTube video or to make $300 from a TikTok is actually a lot harder than it is to make $300 from going out and playing a show. And that's, yeah, so that's really the path to monetization that most people take once they leave Dogtown Studio and once they start to implement the tools that we've made for them.
And I think it's, really a big difference, to have that quality to really capture what you're doing, because if you're just making short clips, which is great, we always encourage people authenticity, like just film yourself on your phone doing some things, but that's only going to get you so far because it's not giving that full experience of what you're doing. And, just recording in the studio is great too, putting out, audio, but if you don't have the full experience, it doesn't really give the venue an idea of what the performance will look like. And I think, you do a really good job capturing what the experience of it will actually be. And, I think that's essential for performing artists, is to really demonstrate what they're doing. I think a lot of times artists think that they know that, but it's not just about the music, it's about kind of the whole vibe, your presence, your appearance, your energy and everything like that, and you can fully capture it in that format.
Totally. I always tell people that music is an art form that is so much more than just what you experience with your ears. Like, music as an art form encompasses what you wear, how you dress, how you present yourself, what your visual design looks like, what fonts you choose, what colors you choose. That it's all part of it. And I think another thing that I often say to people is people, the listener, your fan, they're going to hear with their eyes first. So when you walk into a club or whatever, and you see the band up there, you get your impression so much more through your eyes and what you see in the first millisecond, and then like your what you hear is shaped by that. What you hear is shaped by what you think. And if you're not looking at someone, if you're just listening it, you're picturing what you think they're looking like, what you think they're dressed like, what you think, what their style is like, who you think is playing. But yeah, I think people always kind of underestimate how much the visual art is a part of your musical art.
And there's so much that goes into it. I mean, into the details of a session again, obviously, people don't realize how much happens behind the scenes, but what do you have to do to prepare between, like, getting artists in position, setting them up, the lighting design, the layout, like there's so much detail that goes into that too, that plays into that visual aspect.
Oh, totally. So I have two main categories of the sessions that I do. I'll have custom sessions and then our standard sessions. Our standard sessions are in the studio and it's kind of the same kind of setup, and it's kind of like a templated setup. And that is something that I found very helpful for me to be able to do this sustainably and make money from it, is to have a kind of template of like, okay, this is the way the lighting looks. I don't have to start from scratch every time. I can have it set up in a way and I can build on that every session. I can kind of like tweak something just by like, a millimeter, or like, okay, this light needs to be like 1% brighter or something. And therefore, like, the template gets better and better, and people know what they're getting. The other side, the other category is like custom sessions, which is like the opposite of that, which is like we're going to somewhere weird. We're like doing a session in a barn or in the forest or under a bridge or something, or on a beach. I did one yesterday on a beach, and it was like, that one is kind of like starting from the ground up with like the visual design of it, with the idea, with the concept even. And I think I really love doing that with artists, where we'll just, and if anyone does a custom session, we always have like creative brainstorming sessions where we're like, okay, what is this song? What is the vibe of this song? We really intentionally tackle that question of like, what does this sound look like? what does this song look like? When you're picturing this song, what are you picturing? And so that's one of my favorite things to do with artists, is to be in that mode, brainstorming and just throwing out ideas, and starting it in a way where we're just throwing out everything. My favorite saying, my favorite like phrase in that part of the work is, "This might not work, but," because if you can start, there's always those ideas that are like on the kind of like on the tip of your tongue, and you like don't want to say it because it's maybe a little bit stupid, and you're like, oh, like this is kind of. But I always encourage people to when that happens, to say it, and that's my rule. Like in the studio, is it's like if we're in that mode, if we're brainstorming a thing, and you have that moment where an idea comes and it's like sitting right behind your mouth, then like you have to say it. Like, please say it. And yeah, like probably like half the time it's a dumb idea, and we're like, okay, yeah, maybe that'll work, but it's okay. We need more dumb ideas out there, because like one out of 2 or 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 times, it's like, oh, actually, the idea that you almost didn't say turned out to be like the crux of the entire video, and like that's the thing that makes it cool, and that's the thing that makes it human, and that's the thing that everybody likes about it. So yeah, I think that's really integral to the process of coming up with a cool, fun idea that feels unique, that feels different, it feels like something worth making, is the part of it that you think, oh, this might not work, but let's try this. Like there was an instance where I feel like a lot of the best ideas came this way. There's an instance, it was with this band Fabies. We were in their house and we were trying to like figure out the best place to put them. We're like, like you could all be over here in this corner. And then Garrett, the bassist and one of the singers, was in like another room, like playing his bass, and he's like, this might sound crazy, but what if I was in this room playing the bass, and then Laura was in this room, and Josh was, and their house is kind of set up like a circle. And so it was kind of crazy, but we're like, thought about it for a second, like, well, what if we tried it? And it turned out to make the whole session completely different. And instead of just like one shot, it was like me walking through their house in a circle and seeing different rooms at a time. And it totally made the video.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, having that sort of uncandid or candid, rather, creativity is, you get the most unique results, like you said, the most human things. And so, now with everyone's short attention span, I mean, do you approach things differently now with trying to keep this sort of things rolling or progressing in such a way that keeps engagement, or is it not something you're considering at all?
I try not to race to the bottom in the race for someone's short attention. There's another facet of what I do is I work on a podcast. I'm a producer for a podcast of my friend Dean Spade, who is an author and activist, and he, on the thing that we've learned, because a podcast is such a longer form type of thing, and the thing that we've learned, especially through doing his work, is I don't think that I try not to race to the bottom of the brainstem in terms of like just getting the thing that's the most flashy or the most, stimulating to somebody's eyes. That's if you can do that in a way that's like artistically cool, then I'm like down with it. But I think there's a large audience of people who really want something longer and deeper, and they want a deep connection, and I think that's partly why podcasts, these long form podcasts, like hour, 2 hours, why that can be a thing is because people want to like get into something, and it can be difficult because it's like, okay, you have to give somebody something that's interesting enough where they'll be into it for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really comes back to like honing your craft and making it making it something that's good enough to like legitimately merit 2 hours of someone's time, and focusing your work on that instead of focusing on, oh, what's the way that I can make this splashy or fit this trend or whatever, because those are two diverging paths a lot of times. And we have very, like, with the limited hours that we have to pursue our art and our callings, a lot of us are kind of facing that choice of like, how much do I focus on just like making the thing better, making what I'm saying better, making what I'm putting out there more worthwhile, and the other side is like, how much time do I put into, okay, what is the trend this week, what is the algorithm looking for, what is the, you know, the latest like captioning style that will, and if you're putting all of your time into that one, then you're going to be robbing time from yourself in terms of like making your core deliverable, your core substantial art more worthwhile, more meriting of someone's hour. So I say all that to say, like, I really think there is a market out there for people who really do have the attention span. And if you can get them, if you can get discovered, if you can find a way in front of their eyes, and they can recognize what, you know, that this is an art that is going to earn my long attention span, then I think people can turn on the long attention span for things that they really want to.
Yeah, you make a point about, like, there's, you know, there are those who enjoy the short form and there are those who enjoy long form, and I think there are some who dance line on both.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, like you said, you have to be worthy of someone's time. And you know, I find myself listening to most of my podcasts in the car, and
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to do there, and or even something going on in the background too. And yeah, it's like to each their own, and there's a level of, you know, artistry and uniqueness that is worth pursuing, and one's best kind of service or way to do their thing, to make their statement. And I think that's for anyone, almost like a blue ocean, is just creative, going down that creative interpersonal path and helping when that inform the art itself. And yeah, it's definitely a beautiful thing.
Yes.
One thing that came to mind, you said this a minute ago, and it was how artists or how musicians in particular benefit the most from working with Dogtown. And I noticed you said the word tools at the end, the tools we give them. As a part of your, like, refining of your craft, what have been some of those rather unique kind of pieces or tools that you've given the clients you work with?
Yeah, so we give them the main deliverables, the main things we give them are their videos, the 3 videos that they'll record here, the 3 songs. And we also give them images from the video, like still shots from the videos. And a lot of people will also add on headshots. So on the other side of the studio, basically we'll do the video of the band on one side of the studio, then we'll turn around and I have this backdrop that we can drop down and do headshots for people. And bands and musicians just always need headshots, and it's just a really easy thing to make content out of or put on posters. And then another thing that we have is this list that we've been curating of 100 venues in Michigan. And it's just always helpful to have a list of people to email your stuff to. And yeah. And so, I've really loved shifting more towards that focus, and that this coming season, when we open up again in the fall season, that's going to be even more centralized as part of our focus, because I'm going to work on like making an offering to like just give bands EPKs as well, so that they can choose to just get an EPK delivered to them, or we can make them an electronic press kit, and that will basically showcase all of their stuff. And just my idea is, how can I shorten the distance between a band booking a session and them making money from their music. And I think my goal in this business is to just make those 2 points closer and closer and closer together, to make it so there's less distance and less friction between, okay, Just go in and record a session, and then you're going to have this substantial side income from playing shows. That's the goal, is to like make those two things as close as can be.
I'm sure now your website, because it's pre-related your pop-up.
Oh yeah, right.
Which I love. I mean, the free deliverable, it's awesome. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Heck yes. Yeah, that's how what has the traffic and conversion been like for the free deliverable pop-up, email freemium piece?
I'm not sure. I need to do a better job of tracking my analytics from like where people come from, and if they like came from that free deliverable at the beginning or what. But yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like a lot of people do enjoy it though. It seems like a lot of people get use out of it.
Yeah, you have an awesome website here. I love the
Thanks
layout
so much.
and design.
Thank you.
So as part of your website, have you done a lot of I guess some of that kind of funneling or marketing in that sense, or do you find yourself still very word of mouth?
It's still very word of mouth. Yeah, I don't do like ads or Google ads, or I don't really run those. It's mostly been word of mouth. It's been the type of thing where people usually when a band posts their session, other bands will see that and like talk to them, and it's mostly been word of mouth in that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Your phone's going up. Your phone's hopefully blowing up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that as well. And that's been a very slow trajectory too, just like slowly more and more organic, so just a lot of patience, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
I see. I really like one of your taglines here too. It says, at the studio, bring your music to life. And I know, we already talked a lot about that, but I think, in terms of content, touching on what you'd said between podcasting or with the sessions or with any type of long form, it's really, like you said, is it worth someone's time to engage with this piece of content? And I think it has to do with, is it really valuable? And obviously, if you're really presenting and telling that story, then that's where that value comes in. That's what pulls people in and makes them engage with it. But on a deeper level, bringing someone's music to life, how do you storyboard that, or really tell that story of their music through the different mediums that you do, in addition to what we've already said?
Yeah, I think when I think of like bringing someone's music to life, I think of finding the part of them, finding the part of their personality that is like so unique to them, and seeing where the overlap of that aspect of their personality plus like what comes out in their music, and really trying to hone in on that part. A lot of musicians have a tendency to try to do the opposite. They try to find the things that are unique to them, and they try to mask them over so that they're less different than what has already existed, so that they're more similar to something that has already been there. And in their mind, they're thinking that that's more palatable. If I can be a little bit less like myself and a little bit more like Mariah Carey, or a little bit less like myself and a little bit more like John Lennon or something, it's like they kind of over-index on the idea that people just want to repeat. And I mean, that can be the case. Like sometimes people do want to repeat, but when I'm trying to think of like bringing someone's music to life, I'm trying to think of, okay, what is you, and how can we turn up the volume on you rather than try to like paper it over? How can we turn up that part of you that you might think is not your favorite part of it, but it's actually and a lot of artists I work with actually don't even realize the part of them that's so them in their music, because it's like a fish swimming in water. You don't necessarily realize your energy and how it's different than other people's, because it's the only energy you've ever known. And so a lot of what I do is helping people to see that thing that comes so natural to them, but is so unique. And I think an artist who I'm thinking of is like Myron Elkins. He is a country artist here, and he has the most unique voice, and it's like it's a high, raspy, like yelling kind of like voice, and it is like no other. It is like no other voice, and it does not seem like it can come out of this human. And if he had chosen to try to like sand that rough edge off, he would not be the artist that he is. And the thing is when you sand off those rough edges that are actually you, you're kind of sanding off your ability for people to connect with you. And if people are connecting with the music that you're making when you're kind of like dulling yourself or like taking yourself out of it, it doesn't oftentimes feel as rewarding as when you really like let yourself come through and then somebody sees that and they're like, oh man, that's it. And they're like, I didn't know somebody else was out there who had that thing, or like who said it that way, or who looked at it that way. And when you connect with somebody in that way, that is a type of fulfillment that's a lot different than kind of like fitting yourself into a box and having somebody like that box. So yeah, that a lot of times when I think of bringing somebody's music to life, that's what I think of is how can we take the part of this as it is most you and put that in the forefront instead of putting it in the background.
Oh, that's great. And in addition to helping artists, I know you've done some other projects. When I used to work with West Michigan Jazz Society, you helped us with creating some content for our summer concert series.
I love the Jazz Society.
Yeah, some drone footage and really just like the whole experience of the event, because unless you have been to one of the events, I feel like I always had struggled to market to a new audience on what the experience really is like. Everyone's been to a concert in the park, but just really what it's like to have that setting and out in the meadows of Millennium Park is such a beautiful setting for live music and so peaceful out there, and just the quality of the bands that come through there. And I think like you really helped us translate a lot of that into the content there. So just talk about outside of like in the studio setting, like you mentioned, you've been out on the beach or you've been out in the park, like, and different tools that you use like the drone or things like that, how that changes the perspective and how that tells a story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love working with the Jazz Society. That was so fun. And the thing about, I'll take you a little bit through my process of how I approached the Jazz Society project. For those people who don't know, Millennium Park is this really beautiful park here in Grand Rapids. And every Monday throughout the summer, West Michigan Jazz Society does these jazz concerts in the park out there. And it's just this beautiful setting, and the vibe, like everybody is just like, it just feels like the most summer thing for everybody. Everybody's into it. The music just fits the environment so well. And when I was thinking, okay, how do I showcase this to somebody? Because when I go to the jazz in the park, I can see this vibe, I can feel it, I can feel what it's like. How do I convey that to somebody who isn't there, who isn't listening to it in person, who's just looking at a phone, and who has maybe like 2 seconds before they swipe onto the next thing? The first thing that I thought of is like, okay, I need to take my drone out there, because if somebody can kind of see the setting of it and they can kind of see the big picture of it, that will convey 80% of what I'm trying to get over to them in just one image. And so, yeah, so the drone was very like top of mind for that. And so I took a drone out and I started these, basically any social media piece that I did for them, I would start it with a big wide drone shot and the logo animating on over the drone shot. But the first thing that people see is like, oh, this is people gathered in a really beautiful place watching music. And I think in that project, that was really what I wanted to highlight was just the setting and being able to really drive that in, and the drone was the tool to really capture the whole setting, because I couldn't really do it with a still camera on the ground as well. I mean, it takes it. I could do it, but it takes more shots to be like, okay, person, background, here's trees, and it would take like 5 different B-roll shots to do what I could do in one drone shot, because the drone could see the whole thing. So yeah, I guess I think about that when I think about tools, is what am I trying to convey here? What is the portion of this art form that I want people to see first? And what is the best tool for me to show that efficiently first?
Yeah, I think that content did a really good job of telling the story, like I said, in a way that we had never seen before. Because, of course, we had Facebook events and things on our website, mailed newsletters, writing out the schedule. And, I think for a big thing, a lot of people don't, unless they're really into the scene, they don't know the bands well enough to be like, oh, I have to come see this person in a local music scene. So, like, that experience is so core to it. And I think, like, most people, like even some people I knew that weren't into jazz or didn't like jazz, they were like, I go all the time, because like I love what you said, like this is summer, like that.
Yes.
And I miss it being out here in LA now that I can't go. And that's kind of what pulled me into the Jazz Society when I started working with them, is just seeing the benefit of doing something for the community. These are free concerts, of course, too, supported by the members and donations and things. And just such a great thing. But being able to experience it online, and it really relates to your tagline that we talked about, bringing the music to life, and it being more than just even just one shot or an audio recording. Like, we could never market it that way without that format. So thanks for that again on that project.
Yeah.
But it's something to think about, because in differentiating yourself as an artist, and or promoting an art series or something like that, online it's harder to translate those things over, where if you just had someone in person, like if you were at a venue or you were at experiencing someone's art in person, I think you could win people over. So online, it's so critical to stand out and really differentiate yourself. And of course, some of those tools help with that.
That's so true. I think that one of the best things about doing the work that I do is I get to see so many people who have really dedicated themselves to making a thing, and the thing is really beautiful and amazing, whether it's a song, or whether it's like an event, or whether it's a community that like an organization has curated. A lot of times I go into these places and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is the real thing. Like, this is what people are looking for. And a lot of my job is being like, okay, you did it. You made the real thing. Like at Jazz Society, like you made a really cool thing that like it's just a beautiful way for people to engage with music. You did it. You did the thing. Now, how do I take that and make it clear to everybody else that the real thing is here? Because there's a lot of fake things that are really well polished and that are really, right in front of our faces all the time, trying to convince us that they're the real thing. But how do I take the real thing and take the right shots, or take the right audio snippets, or take the right sound bites, and get it in front of somebody's face where they can see it, and they can see it for what it is, and they can appreciate the thing that I'm appreciating while I'm there experiencing it. That's a lot of my process.
It makes me think of like the transition in the music industry when it went from, just the recording industry to the revolution of MTV, and when people saw music and they were like the theatrics of it. And I think there's been kind of a renewed sense of that with everything with the Michael Jackson biopic. And I just kind of saw that production and how much effort that went into that, and the love of the craft and performing. And it seems like that's the key. Like, that's the value that people are looking for, is that dedication and that quality of the experience, and it not just being something where they're hearing it, but it's this whole overall sensation that is of course better live, but can be captured digitally given the right tools.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier, Robby, about some things are being like over-indexed or over-focused on, over-hyped in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
What's the inverse of that? What do you think is being underhyped that people should be talking about right now?
Oh man, there's so many things. And this is like the exciting part, right? Because there's so much like green pastures that people can just go out and graze on. And I think a big thing is like in person. I think there was a time where the focus shifted so drastically to social media that people thought, okay, well, this is how you do it. If I want to be a musician, I have to be like, that became synonymous like trying to be an influencer. And I think that I don't think that was ever the case, that being an influencer was, the quickest path to becoming a musician, or to making a career out of music. I don't think that was ever the quickest or most efficient like way, but I think that especially now it's really not. And I think that there's so much in terms of just like cultivating a in-person community, in your neighborhood, in your city or wherever. There's just in-person events, like throwing events for your organization, like the West Michigan Jazz Society concert series, like events where you're getting people out of their houses in contact with other people, is something where I think a lot of people are really starving for that now. And I get hired to do video for a lot of events, and when I'm at them, I'll often give people microphones and say like, okay, what do you think about this? What's the vibe of this event? And so often people are like, yeah, it feels so good just to get out and meet with people in real life. And there's such a hunger for that I think is really underappreciated. And I think a lot of artists can really benefit from that. Even if it's just like going to a fun event in your town and setting up a little booth, like that is fun. Like this, I think people under index on like what is fun for them or what is like rewarding for them. And there's something about like reconnecting with what do I actually enjoy, not what do I think I should be doing. Because when you tap into that, your fuel source is a lot more deep. You have a lot more fuel for something that is filling you up personally than you have to do something that you don't really want to do, which is why so many people, I interact with artists all the time who are like, I really don't want to make short form videos. I really don't want to like film myself. I really don't want to, do a TikTok dance or do whatever. But they feel like they should. And every time they drag themselves out of bed to do that, they feel a little bit more drained. And then the next time they go to drag themselves out of bed, they're like, I really don't want to. And but there are other things that make them feel more alive when they do it. And it's kind of like a perpetual motion device. It's like a thing that gives you fuel as you burn the fuel. And if people can connect with those things in their life, that is, I think, the real unlock. Because they're like, it's fun for me to go to like an event and set up a little table and like talk with people about what I'm doing or what I made. And this can be for any type of art. You can just go set up a little booth for yourself at where you're like displaying your art or displaying your podcast, or handing out little like flyers or handing out cards for your podcast, handing out cards for your new organization that you're thinking of. For me, that, and for I know a lot of other people, this isn't for everyone, but it's about finding what works for you. For me, something like that where I'm interacting with people, I end it a lot more energized than I started. And so for me, something like this podcast, like I end this podcast like with more energy than I had when I started it, and I think it's important to pay attention to those things of what gives you that energy. How can you double down on that fuel source? How can you lean into that and not just doing the motions that you think you should be going through?
So I want to also come back to a point that you made earlier about anything that we can do to reduce the friction from when someone comes to you initially to when they're getting that ROI there. There's a couple layers that I want to dig into because it's pretty similar to what we're doing. We think about, someone that's coming to us, for consulting work, and they're saying, hey, I want to get my project off the ground. But of course, most people want that ROI because, resources are limited. We all have to put bread on the table, that type of thing. And, it's great to do things for the passion of it, but a lot of people want to take their art into their career and make it the thing that really pushes themselves out there. So I guess what are your thoughts on, where maybe you'll go with what you're doing, or what artists can do with what they're doing to really, reduce that time and friction between getting started and marketing their art to actually doing what they want to do and getting paid for it?
Absolutely. This is a really important concept to talk about, I think, because I think a lot of artists think about investment wrong. I think a lot of artists think about return on investment, and they think about investment in a lens that is actually not investment. I think a lot of artists think spending, like what they're actually talking about is spending money when they're saying the word invest. But if the point of an investment is that you spend money so that very soon thereafter you can make more money back. And so I think if we boil it down to the basics, that's what you're doing when you're investing. And if the second part, the part about getting money back, if that part isn't happening, then what you're doing is just spending money. And that's okay to do. And that there are a lot of ways in which it's beautiful to spend money on your art, on your thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think if we're talking about doing an investment, artists are just so used to I think a lot of artists have been taken advantage of in a lot of ways, where people will convince them they're making an investment by buy this thing, this, buy our piece of gear, buy our pedal, buy this or that. And that's, you're investing if you do that. But think about this as a musician, or whatever art you have, think about it in this way. I know musicians best, so I'm going to talk about it in terms of music, but I encourage musicians I work with to be like, okay, what is the way that I am most likely to make money back from what I'm doing? That's kind of how we got into the realm of making things mostly for artists to use, booking shows. Because like I said before, that your first $100 from a show is going to come to you so much quicker than your first $100 from YouTube subscribers. And okay, so that's where's the most realistic money going to come from? It's definitely not coming from Spotify. It's definitely not coming from Spotify. There's so many artists who I know who make a great living off of playing live shows, and that is the main thing that they're doing with their life, is playing music, and they make less than $100 a year from Spotify. Spotify is that is not your investment. Think about it in cold hard facts terms. And so I think it just starts with where's the money actually at? What things can I do to get myself closer to that? If you're going to try to get closer to having money come from a concert, you need to get the concert first. You need to get the show first. And to get the show, you have to, one step back from that is you have to convince whoever is determining who gets the show that you are legit and that you're professional. And the way that those bookers, the way that those people choose how to delegate that opportunity is by looking at your video right now. Because like you said before at the top of the show, if you just send them an audio recording, they're going to be like, okay, this is great, but I don't even know if this is real humans making it, because AI can make music that sounds just like real humans. And even if it is real humans, maybe they did all these studio tricks, maybe there's all this auto-tune, maybe it won't sound anything like this when they play it live. So, and then on the other side, a music video is a similar thing, because it's okay, this is just recorded music, and then there's a story happening over it. But that doesn't show the booker anything about what this band performs live like. So having a good professional recording that shows this is actually what you're going to get if you book us for a show. We're going to be up here. We're going to be playing guitars. I'm going to look like me. My guitarist is going to look like him. You don't have to worry about it. And yeah, and so I think it's kind of just breaking it down to what is the step by step of where's money at, What is the step-by-step of how I cross every bridge to get to that money? And then once I can, trace that entire path, what are the bottlenecks that are holding me back at each one? So once, maybe my video isn't as professional as it could be, maybe that's the bottleneck. Maybe if I had a better one, I could convince more bookers that our band is worth, or just kind of going through and seeing at each of those. Maybe the bottleneck is like you don't know enough people to reach out to, and maybe that's like making more contacts or finding more, doing just deep research online about what venues can I play at, talking with other musicians, especially about where are venues who are booking my kind of music. So it's about, determining that path for yourself. And then once you've determined the quickest path between you and the money, determining where the bottlenecks are and just widening up each part of the path that is becoming a bottleneck. So I think that's one way to think about it.
I think one thing I took away from that is definitely like your intention of what you're putting out there, because I think sometimes with marketing, people put something, I guess, art for art's sake type content, right? But it isn't really clear on what you're doing. I mean, we've even had that in our own journey of making content here. Like sometimes we put up various different types of content, and sometimes it's not very clear or intentional about what we're trying to get across to the audience. They might say, hey, that's cool, that's interesting, but there's no call to action or any takeaway from them to do something. So I guess that's a struggle probably for artists coming to you. If they're looking at an ROI, if they come in and make a really cool piece of art that's got something that demonstrates their art, but it's not really a clear intention of like, hey, this is part of my EPK, I'm trying to get my band booked using this information. There's probably a way different approach for those two different paths, right?
That's so true. And I think that you are hitting on something that's such an important part that I definitely want to include this whenever I'm talking about ROI or whatever I'm talking about investment, is that getting an ROI is not the point of making your art. That is not the only end goal. Like that can be an end goal, and that can be something that you work on, that helps you do it more. That's great and that's fun. But it doesn't have to be. I think a lot of artists, especially when we're talking about like art business podcasts, all these type of things, it can get really cloudy. Like, what is the goal? What am I here for? What did I show up for? And a lot of people can start, once you start talking about investment and start talking about your business, it can be really easy to kind of like slowly drift into this world where like the premise is that, you're doing it to make money, and once you make a career, then that's the end goal, right? And I always try to pull back and be like, okay, look at the big picture. That is important, and it's a part of what we do, and it's a part of what makes you able to do your art, is if you can get money doing it. And if I can spend 8 hours of my day working on this art piece instead of 8 hours of my day working in a factory or working in a bartending shift, that is a huge lever to be able to like let me do more of what I feel like I'm called to do on this earth. That's an enormous part of making me more free to be doing that thing. But like I said, it's not the only reason to do it, right? And I think that what you just said, like separating those things and being like, okay, these things both exist. Art for art's sake is good. Like, you want to enjoy what you do enough to like want to do it on the weekend. You want to be able to make something that you don't know if it's going to be monetizable. You don't know if people are going to buy it. Because that is where creativity lies. Like, if you're making something and you're like, oh, this might just be weird, and it might be something that only I like. Again, like my favorite phrase, this might not work, which is the phrase that signifies we're entering into creativity. Like, that is kind of at odds with like, this will make me money. I kind of described two different like approaches, like in the different parts of the things I talked about. On the one side, I described like what I just said of like, think about the ROI, think about your path to it. That is one side of what we do to try to get more money to do what we're called to do on this planet. But the other side of it is like, stop thinking about if it's going to work or not, and just say your idea, try your idea, even if it might not work. And I think it's just really important to remember that both of those coexist, having a healthy balance of both of those, not getting too caught up in one of them or the other. And yeah, just kind of like living in that tension. And it just, I think a helpful thing is just being aware of when you're doing work for one side or the other, and being like, okay, I'm aware, it's clear to me that I am doing a thing to pay the bills right now. And then on the other side, and then this, this other block of my calendar is like my creative time. And during that time, it's clear to me that I'm being creative and doing my weird thing, and like someone might not like it, and it's an experiment. But I think having clear delineation of like, okay, it's okay to be doing both of them. And it's so many people I know don't feel like they're allowed to make time for the weird thing, for the thing that might not work. And I think it's so important that every artist probably listening to this has over-indexed on like, it only is worth doing. It's only worth making time in my calendar if it makes money. Like, so many artists need to like bring back in the other side, the like, just go into your calendar right now and put 3 hours on it somewhere. Put a 3-hour block where you're going to turn off your phone and you're going to do the weird thing that you haven't done in a while. And you're like, maybe like putting music onto a cassette tape and playing it backwards, and just like doing that weird thing, and not doing it to be like, oh, this is going to be the coolest content ever. If I do this and if it's like successfully weird, then it's going to be like, don't think of successfully weird. Just think of weird. Like, having time in your life for the weird and the thing that makes money, both. I totally encourage both of those things to be in your calendar. And yeah, especially make time for the one because so many people, myself included, feel really guilty putting time in their calendar to literally just play. But I think it's so important to do the weird thing. Go play at home tonight with something that might be really unsuccessful. Have fun with it.
That's awesome. It makes me think of Rick Rubin with some of the things that you were just saying, and his, if anyone out there is not familiar with Rick Rubin, producer and composer, and just great thinker, I think, about music and humanity and whatnot. But his book, The Creative Act, I think he's got like a Netflix documentary too, if you don't want to read a book. And not everyone's into reading a book nowadays, but yeah, I just like pulled a few insights from the book. I got a little overview here, but the artist role being that creativity is a daily practice, process over product, cultivating a state where creation is inevitable, and focusing on experimentation. Detached creation, where artists are encouraged to create for themselves rather than the work or the outcome, or even the audience's reception of it. And of course, mindset, true creativity, abundance and openness rather than rigid reasoning. And I think a lot of people are like, that sounds great, but I need to pay my bills. But I think, a lot of the people that are truly dedicated to that mindset and that practice, and they detach themselves from the outcome, they see a lot of things come to them where when you're chasing that ROI and what we were just talking about with that intention, I think you can get really caught up in, analytics and being like, okay, my, TikTok didn't get that many views, or, I'm not getting booked for this many things. And like, maybe, those are not the right KPIs to be tracking a creative career. And it's always tough because, art for art's sake, is great, but people need, to feel that what's coming to them is worthwhile. And I think, it's good to have a balance of both and to have strategies in place. But I think, with the amount of workload that's been put onto artists to do everything themselves, where, maybe a performing artist would have a label doing all these things for them in the past if they really made it. But now even, many like small to medium artists that are touring or producing their own things, they have to do all these things. Like you said, it's very draining to come on and do a TikTok dance. Like, that's not what you want to do. Like, you want to create. So I think, that's a good mental map of like time blocking. Like, hey, I'm going to put some time to be creative over here, take some time to work on the business here. But maybe it's also, bringing a team in. Like, we encourage, building our community, that people reach out to us and come talk to us. We love to help people. Or, I hope, I'd encourage, after this conversation, maybe some individuals would come to you for help, to, you know, put together their ideas and, you know, outsource that part that's not their thing. Like, I think people nowadays feel like I need to be a content creator, I need to be running my business, do marketing, I need to do all the editing, I need to do the producing, I need to record, I need to write songs, I need to book tours, do the logistics. Like, it's just too much for one person to be able to do all of that. And, you know, if you're investing in yourself, you know, building a team around you and having a network to tap on for these different things that you need is really critical. And, you know, we try to emphasize that. But I think you make a really good point there in, you know, just what is the intention of the content when you're putting something out, and really thinking about that. And maybe that's a mindset shift for a lot of people, where instead of, you know, just doing something to get booked, maybe it's, I'm doing this for myself and people will notice if I put out something quality. And, you know, making that investment to come do a session with you is part of that, you know, capturing that whole vibe and that energy of what they're doing. And maybe it's not a commercial, but it's an experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
That's a treat. Absolutely.
Well, I know we're going to be wrapping soon here and some closing thoughts, but one last quick topic I wanted to get in, I want to hear your thoughts on is with everything going on with AI, you know, if someone came to you and said like, hey, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I could just have AI edit this or put this together for me or create this content for me. Like, what would you say to them if they came to you with that thought process?
Oh man, you picked the wrong topic for the last. This is going to take 3 more hours now, so I hope you're ready. No,
we'll do a whole pod on that.
This is actually a really good constraint. This is a really good way to make me rein it in. And how can I say the millions of thoughts that I have in a way that is coherent and constrained? This is such an important topic right now. This is huge. It is the way that we're doing music is absolutely changing. The technology out there is absolutely changing. We're moving through a shift, and we're, as musicians, as artists, it is our role to define culture and to direct. The artists have always been the spearhead of where is culture going, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, what's worth pursuing in our lives. Artists have always been the ones at that spearhead, at the forefront, the preceding stage of revolutions, you know, codifying our values. What does our society value? What do we stand for? What's worth standing for? And I think in this moment, we're seeing a lot of artists taking stands around that with AI, because myself and so many of the people who I know, when it comes to art and creation, we have a strong conviction to do everything in our power to steer the future of art towards human created art, and art that centers human values and lived experience and messy realities that we all go through as humans. And I think that everything that I said kind of leading up to this feeds into this, where I'm talking about, like, what is the part in a human that makes them them? What is, you know, not the part that is most like everybody else, which I think is like what AI does really well, is like creating something that is the exact median of what has already been made, creating the thing that is the like 100% average of every other input that has ever existed. And I think that the point of art is to resist that temptation, right? To resist that urge to just make what has already been made, and to make the thing that is risky. Art is risk. Like rock, there's a movie that was referenced by Jack Conte, who is the CEO of Patreon. I love Jack Conte. Anything he makes is amazing. That this movie that he referenced, I think, is called Sing Street. And there's a moment in there where the older brother is talking to the younger brother about being in a band. And he's like, rock and roll is a risk. You risk being ridiculed. You risk putting yourself out there and having it not be accepted. And the risk of being yourself, the risk of saying your thing, is really central to what it means to be a human, to share that human vulnerability. So yeah, I think that there are places for these tools. I use AI a lot. I'm definitely not against AI, but I use it a lot, and I think it's so important that we're being really conscious about the ways in which we're using it and the ends towards which we are that we're pursuing when we're using it, because I think it can be great for helping you take time off of your plate to do the thing that is more you. So like taking time off of my plate in terms of like my bookkeeping, and in terms of my, I didn't become a musician to be better at bookkeeping. I want that to be done faster, right? There are parts of my life, there are parts of my career, like sorting my files on my computer or something. I want that to be done faster. Sorting through my junk mail and getting rid of my junk emails. Yes, like take that out of my life, please. I want that done faster. Music creation is not one of those things. I don't want to speed that up to, you know what I mean? I don't want to take the hours of my life that I spend doing that and make them more efficient so that they're done faster. It's all about the ends to which we're using these tools. And I think that to some people, I think especially to like, if you listen to the CEO of Suno and these tech people who are tech people at their core, and they've found their way into a music adjacent way of implementing their tech, they will talk about music and they'll talk about the act of making music with your friends as though it is one of these tasks that you need to be doing more efficiently. That is not what music is for to me. That is not the universe I live in terms of like what the purpose of music is for. The jams that I have with my friends, the times that we get together and do band practice, those are not things that I'm trying to make more efficient or make done faster or get off of my calendar. That is not labor that I'm trying to remove from my life. And yeah, I think that AI in general is a huge conversation, and I think that those of us who are making art have so much more of a calling now to be making our art thoroughly from ourselves. And we have no reason to make art that's trying to be like somebody else, because if that's our goal, it's easier to just say, make Drake say this song. It's never been easier to make something fake. What is the point in doing it anymore? What's the point in even trying to do it anymore? And so I think that in this conversation, artists have an extremely important role. And I think the medium is the message. The fact that we're even out here making our own human-made art, the fact that you go out there, even if you're playing instrumental music that doesn't have any lyrics that can possibly be about AI or about society at all, the fact that you're going out there and making that music is saying a message. The medium is the message. Making your art, in whatever form that might be, is a profound statement in these times.
Well, extremely well said, and I think a very good closing point to this whole conversation. And my big takeaway is, that we talked a lot on the podcast in prior episodes about how we can use AI for good, for efficiency and productivity of the things that we don't want to do, and all these things that are being put on to artists. Use those tools to their advantage, and hopefully it frees us up to be more creative, have more time for these things, and to all get together and get back to having in-person events and creating, and not being caught up doing our tasks like organizing our files and bookkeeping and all these things that you don't want to be doing, right? So
exactly.
Well, really appreciate your time today. This was a great conversation. I feel like it could spawn into like many more conversations in the future. We also I wanted to put a plug for We have office hours every Friday if anyone wants to come hang and just chat about stuff like this. Trying to build our community and network together. So anyone listening out there, come on, join us and just open discussion if you want to get in on the dialogue. But if you need anything produced and you're in the Grand Rapids area, or I'm sure even remotely too, Robby, let's get in touch with Robby here if you need something done at Dogtown Studios, and we definitely will continue these conversations about the role of the artist in the modern era and blending the physical and the digital together. So really good conversation again. Thank you. And that wraps up episode 24 here of Rooted, the Art Arbor podcast. Any final thoughts for the audience, Robby?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. Thanks for being down to talk about this with me. It was really fun.
Hell yeah.
Great. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and go out there and grow. Thrive.
Peace.
Peace.